Hey everyone, Genome here, coming at you with my next Marvel Strike Force video. In today's video, I want to talk a little bit about what you saw in the thumbnail, and we're talking none other than the pelvic thruster himself, Starlord, and also as pertaining to the title of the thumbnail and the video itself is, what's wrong with him? Why is he not used everywhere? He's a legendary, isn't he great? A lot of older guides say go for him. Well, I'm here to tell you what is wrong with Starlord. It may not be what everyone thinks it is, but let's just get this right out in the open right away. He is not something you need to be going for at first at all. He gets almost zero use in anything even approaching the mid-game or later mid-game, and as far as the late game, nothing. Now, granted, there's a slight resurgence with this guy now because of like some of his interactions with Gamora, right? That's just till you get Adam Warlock, and honestly, you're better off sticking Kestrel on that team or whatever. I know you can make a hybrid of sorts, but really, you'd be better served putting another character in there, because her damage is already plenty high enough. She doesn't need any more. But let's go over his kit really fast, and I'm going to go kind of show you why he's a bad character nowadays, and why I don't think you should be going for him. So, okay, let's just start off with some of his regular stuff. His basic is just a chain attack, nothing special. You know, it's something to do. It is a strategic attack, because a lot of times in raids, he's one of the most strategic raid characters in the game, if not most. He's very nuanced. It's very strange, like, you constantly have to make choices with this guy. Do I go for the turn 1 nuke, or do I save the nuke for maybe an execute move later on? And a lot of times you're going to have characters that are close together, adjacent, right, that are close to death's door, and you want to use his special, right, to give energy to another character, which is usually the best idea regardless, but they might be so close to death, this thing might chain and kill them, like any other basic that would chain and kill. So you're always having to make choices with this guy. It doesn't sound like much, but there's some actual nuance to this guy. Anyway, his basic is just that, a basic that chains, nothing special at all. His best move is undoubtedly his special, and he is one of the very few characters that throws around energy, and he might be technically the best at it, because a lot of his stuff is not tied into a specific trait or team. He does definitely have some Guardian tie-ins, well, more not on the passive, but like for this one, it's just anybody. He's flinging this thing around like crazy. This is up a lot of times, more often than you would think it would be, and it's his best move, but part of this is his problem. Anyway, we'll get into that in a little bit. And finally, his usually turn 1 nuke does pretty good damage, except for another of his failings. But yeah, it's just all it is a big damage first turn nuke. Just think of like Iron Man, but not having to wait 3 turns to use the dang thing. And his passive, of course, which works best on Guardian teams, and it has a tie-in with Gamora, of course, giving her the extra damage and speed. But really, what makes it valuable is just him flinging energy around. And once again, it has tie-ins with both any team or any teammate with him and Guardian. So you can do double duty depending on how you build the team. So, yes, on paper, really good kit, right? Energy is basically king after speed in this game, right? And you could make an argument for both ways. I think Thanos is overall a better energy battery and more useful, because he does double duty as a tank and an energy battery, and he can self-heal and all that, which none of that Starlord has. But Starlord, kit's pretty decent, right? Especially for an older kit, and he used to be a top-tier character, so what's wrong with him? Well, let me switch over to MSF.GG, and I'll tell you what's wrong with this guy. Alright, so there's the change of venue, and I have Starlord pulled up, and here is where the character falls apart. I'm going to set him and other characters to compare him to at 7 yellows, 7 reds. Okay, most people are not going to have him at 7 reds. Let's hope, unless you just pull it randomly. But say this will come in handy for someone who accidentally pulls a high star on him, like 6 or 7, right? Do you still want to build him? I still think the answer is pretty much no. There's more valuable things you could be building earlier on than building the Guardians, of which only Gamora sees any type of play whatsoever, really. So, yeah, he's just not worth it. But here, remember, I've been telling you why? Okay, here's why. At 7 yellows, 7 reds, his health is 250,000. That's assuming also you have, I maxed out his ISOs too, so you get all the health bonuses for maxing out ISOs. Yeah, that's weak. That is very, very weak. He will get 1 shot and 2 shot at best in any U7 raid. I'm talking U7-1 or above. Couple that with his really low armor at 16,000. He just cannot survive. He has 0 real mitigation. That's his failing. You could say that his special acts as a form of mitigation. You're throwing up to 3 blinds around, right? Depending if you put the T4 into it, which I do not recommend. Guess what? Here's the other failing of his. His focus is really, really low. He is not going to beat most focus checks on characters released in the last year and a half or so. He's just not going to do it. That's the biggest failing. So basically, it just turns into, hey, I'm pushing the button, I'm hoping to blind one character anyway, and then throw out some ability energy. That's good, but it's not worth putting him on a team because you gotta protect him so much to keep his fragile self alive that it's just not even funny. Okay, and let's talk about a third problem, is his damage. 2 things in his kit do nothing but damage. He's a controller, he needs more control, right? But it's not, his basic and his ultimate just do damage. So his damage is ridiculously low. This was pretty high damage stat in the old days, but let me tell you something, man, it isn't anymore. So you're not going to be beating the health pools of other characters with this guy anymore. So then he just turns into a straight control character, of which he has a cooldown of 4, which there's ways around that a little bit, of course, and it's not always going to do half of what it's supposed to do, which is blind, right? So yeah, he just, it's so hard to keep him alive. And right, I mean, AoE stuff is killing this guy. He just cannot survive without constant protection and healing, and that's not usually the most efficient way to run raids. So just to say I'm not picking on him per se, I picked out a couple other healers, or excuse me, a couple other controllers that play right now, and let's compare their stats a little bit. Really, which is kind of funny to me, his most close comparison, really, stat-wise, is probably Zemo. The Zemo still beats him by 30,000 health, which is still not saying a ton, but we all know how fragile Zemo is. But, comparable damage stat, he's actually got lower armor, but much, much better focus. And you're bringing controllers in to control the other team. They have to be able to do that one thing they're good at. Zemo almost always lands his ability block turn 1. That makes him valuable. And Starlord just doesn't have that. So that's one of his biggest failings. But yeah, okay, so Zemo is comparable, but still probably, 15% better in stat-wise than Starlord, all right? So we're moving on up a little bit. I'll go back to another older character, too, which is kind of funny, too. Black Widow has a higher health pool than Starlord. He's a legendary, but she has a higher health pool. Let's look at her armor is lower, but her damage is comparable to Starlord's. In fact, I think it's higher, isn't it? Let's see. Yeah, it's higher. She has a higher damage stat than him, right? And her armor is a little bit lower, and their health pool's higher, but once again, she has mitigation. She is in stealth for a lot of the battle. So, poor Starlord. What's he going to do? Okay, let's get even crazier. Let's go over to Hela, shall we? I picked only controllers, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. Okay, same stats with 7 and 7, and then max ISO, right, on green side. 326,000. So she has basically, 80 more thousand health than him? Pretty substantial. She's got mitigation with Greg going on, at least versus the AI, but right, there's some healing, self-heals coming in there. Look at her damage. She's got 10,000 more damage than him. She's also a controller with an AoE attack, by the way. Armor, way higher than his. Focus, she has very little she needs to use for focus even. Landing or spreading the debuffs helps. Not too much stuff usually resist it, to be honest with you. And then applying the disrupt with her special every now and then. But, and peeling death through with basic. With all that stuff notwithstanding, she's got a better focus, right? So, yeah, now we're cranking up there, and she's on a node. Much easier to get to nowadays than she used to be. And finally, let's just go to another controller. It seems pretty regular play here, Emma. Oh, boy. Talk about some differences here. Let's look at this health total here. 180,000 higher. Yes, you're not going to usually see too many 7 yellow, 7 red stars, but my point is the stat growth is off the freaking scale compared to what he has. Damage, she outclasses him by like 4,000. Armor is looks like a little bit less, but who cares? She has diamond form. She has tons of mitigation. She has blind that will stick because her focus is almost 18,000. She gets like 10,000 more focus than Starlord, whose sole reason for being there for the most part is his special, which only does half the work. And she has high resistance and everything else too. Blows him out of the water. Now, I'm actually going to take this a little bit further and say a lot of characters or newer players, actually most people in general, are not going to have him at 7 reds, right? Let's just say, for argument's sake, you got him at all 7 yellows. Let's take 2 of them stars off for reds. And we're going to go, let's also give him ISO level 3. Okay, let's just say that. Let's calculate again. I don't know why this went up here. I don't know if this makes a difference on the calculator. I autoed it. But we'll do this again. Just assuming you're saving ISO for other things. All right, so say you have a more normal one. I think mine is at 5 reds as well. So 7 stars or yellow stars and 5 reds. He's clocking in at 206,000 health. No, that's not going to make it. It just is not going to make it in-game gear. And that is the major failing of this character. He needs tons of health. And, you know, even tanks really can't help him because AoE attacks are going to kill this guy. He's just too fragile. He is, once again, like a glass cannon, but with no cannon. He's basically a glass pop gun nowadays. I took him through my first run of DD2. He is a very versatile plug-and-play character, and he may see use again, but he's going to need a big stat boost. So just his health pool alone is reason enough for me to not recommend him. And let's go ahead and switch back to the screen again here, and then we can look at him in all his splendor. So yes, I'm afraid I just can't recommend Starlord. I mean, it's not that the character sucks and his kit sucks, it's just that his stats suck. And if your stats suck, you can't be used in the end game. Here I am, he's only 1172, that's why I stopped. I haven't used him since the DD2 was semi-current, right? And look where he is, 136,000. So you have to crank him up to like 80 to even give him a chance to survive more than one hit. And he's not going to survive anything but maybe a basic hit from a lower tier character in these raids where, you know, they're sitting at like 140k power. It's just not going to happen. And forget using him in RTA. He'll get blasted first round by any other team that's out there. He's not a sure win even in Blitz. And like get an 8 and 3 and see what happens to him, both the Guardians and or teams with Starlord on it. He's just a weak link. He needs serious stat love. I really wouldn't change his kit too much. Other maybe give him, he's a controller, do something else with one of his attacks other than just do damage, right? Because he is a controller, you know, put defense down with his basic or something. Something small like that would really help it, but he needs a stat boost like no tomorrow. So once again, I warn new players to probably stay away from this guy. If you farm him incidentally, that's fine. You know, you get some orb pulls, and after a while, you start gathering up Guardian characters. You know, that's just nature of the beast. But man, don't go out of your way for him because he just cannot survive. Anyway, hopefully this was a somewhat informative video for you, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Or if you have a great experience with him, I used him a lot in my late early game days and maybe early mid game days. So. Such a delineation there. Anyway, yeah, tell me your love or horror stories with Starlord, and until next time, this is Genome, just kind of oiling up his thrust for these pelvic moves.